The weight of the sun, the air, thick with the smell of sun-scorched earth and dry acacia, seemed to hum with an unbearable tension. The desert, in the grip of a ruthless drought, was a canvas of muted browns and bleached grays. Every gust of wind carried with it fine dust, the restless ghost of a landscape that had known life and water once. The vast, flat expanse of the savannah stretched to an indifferent horizon, mocking the hope of rain. Amidst this oppressive stillness, a lone cheetah moved. His name was Kael, a name lost to the wind now. He was a fluid line of muscle and spotted fur, his gait a testament to both predatory grace and profound exhaustion. Kael was a specialist, built for speed, a perfect machine of the chase. But in this skeletal world, speed was useless. There was nothing to chase. His hunger had grown into a physical thing, a constant, gnawing presence in his belly. It was not just an appetite. It was a distraction, a weakness that pulled at his concentration. Kael had been running on the memory of strength for 3 days now. He was a ghost of a hunter, his legendary speed and agility blunted by thirst. His head was low, his amber eyes scanning the sparse undergrowth, not for easy prey, but for any sign of life, however small. The day's heat was a heavy cloak, but the approaching night promised no relief. The sun, a bloated orange orb, sank slowly, painting the dust haze with bruised colors. Every shadow was long and distorted, twisting the familiar into the menacing. He caught the scent first, not the typical musk of an animal, but a more complex, layered aroma. The damp, earthy smell of disturbed soil, mingled with the unmistakable tang of blood, a metallic, sharp note that cut through the dry air. He froze, his lithe body a question mark against the setting sun. His whiskers twitched, his ears swiveled, trying to pinpoint the source. The scent led him to a small clearing, sheltered by a cluster of gnarled baobab trees. These ancient giants, silent sentinels of the drought, seemed to cradle the desperate hope of life. It was a watering hole, or what had once been one. Now it was just a depression in the cracked earth, a mosaic of mud fissures, a mockery of what it should have been. But life barely was there. A small band of baboons, desperate and famished, had found a few remaining drops of muddy water at the bottom of the pit. They were a pathetic sight. Their normally boisterous, aggressive group was now quiet and withdrawn, unified only by their shared misery. An old male, his fur matted and gray, stood guard, his gaze weary yet vigilant. Kael knew this type of vigilance. It was the frantic alertness of an animal with everything to lose. Kael's predatory instinct flared, a brief, hot flame in his cold, empty stomach. A baboon, a child perhaps, would be easy prey. A quick kill, a brief, bloody meal. But Kael was not just an animal of instinct. He was a survivor, and his years had taught him the silent, deadly language of the desert. He saw the old male, the exhausted mother clutching her young, and he knew that this was a trap. A fight for survival, where every movement, every ounce of expended energy could be the last. He remained motionless, a statue of patterned shadow, weighing the cost. Suddenly, a shift in the air, a whisper of a different kind. It was not a scent, but a change in the atmosphere, a sudden spike in tension. The baboons, who had been focused on their precious drops of water, stiffened. The old male's eyes, once full of a weary defiance, now held a new, chilling fear, a raw, primal recognition. Kael, his body still and silent, felt it too. The ground began to vibrate, a low, guttural thrum. It wasn't the light, rhythmic footfall of a lone predator. It was deeper, more ominous. A different kind of hunter. A pack. Kael thought of his own isolation. The wild dogs had numbers, an unspoken covenant of blood that gave him endless stamina. He had only his speed, which was fading fast. In the encroaching darkness, the first form emerged from the shadows. It was a pack of African wild dogs, Lycaon pictus, but these were not the usual chaotic yapping hunters. They were a unified force, their painted coats a shifting mosaic in the dim light. Their movements were silent, their focus absolute. Their leader, a female with a scar over one eye that resembled a tear, was a study in grim efficiency. Every sinew in her body spoke of hunger and ruthless intelligence. She hadn't seen Kael yet. Her attention, and that of her pack, was entirely on the baboons. They spread out, a semicircle of death, their long muzzles low to the ground, their large, round ears twitching. Their intentions were clear: methodical, inevitable slaughter. The old baboon let out a low, mournful cry, a sound of resignation and despair. Kael, the cheetah, was now a third party in this desolate dance. He was a creature of speed, a sprinter, not a long-distance fighter. His options were simple: retreat and lose a potential meal, or stay and risk a confrontation with an enemy he could not outrun in a prolonged fight. He needed to decide, and the dogs were already moving. The cheetah's internal clock was ticking. Every moment he stayed, the risk multiplied. He watched the dog leader, her scarred eye fixed on the baboon's weakness, the young. She was a master tactician, not relying on brute force, but on relentless exhaustion of her prey. The wild dogs charged. It was not a chaotic attack, but a symphony of coordinated movements. Two dogs darted to the right, a brilliant feint, forcing the old baboon to turn and expend precious energy, while the others surged forward, aiming for the helpless mother and her young. The baboon, in a last act of desperate courage, let out a piercing shriek and bared his teeth. He charged down the slope, a final futile gesture. But the wild dogs were relentless, their discipline honed by countless hunts. They dodged his furious charge with casual ease. Just as a dog leaped for the mother, Kael acted. It was not an attack on the pack, but a calculated, explosive diversion. He erupted from the shadows, not towards the baboons, but in a wide, sweeping arc that brought him directly into the dog's path. He didn't make a sound. He ran, not to fight, but to break their rhythm, to introduce chaos where there had been order. His goal was simple: to split the pack, even for a heartbeat. He flew past the flank of a dog that had momentarily lost its focus. The wild dogs, surprised by this sudden interruption, faltered. They were built for pursuit, not sudden defense. The one-eyed leader let out a bark of frustration and confusion, her eyes darting between the baboons and this new, unexpected intruder. She saw not a rival, but a reckless interruption to her flawless plan. The baboons, sensing their chance, the tiny window Kael had ripped open, scrambled up a nearby baobab tree. The rough bark offered a momentary refuge. The old male, exhausted and bleeding from a shallow graze, pulled himself up last, his eyes fixed on the cheetah below. There was no gratitude in his stare, only a fleeting confusion, replaced instantly by the harsh reality of survival. Kael, having bought them a brief moment of reprieve, did not stay to fight. He was a strategist, not a warrior. He had achieved his objective. The pack was fractured, the prey temporarily safe. Now he had to disappear. He pivoted with impossible speed, his body a blur of motion. The wild dog leader, her eyes burning with a cold fury, let out a deep, guttural growl and charged. The chase was on, but it was not the pack's preferred long-distance pursuit. It was a desperate, immediate sprint. Kael's legs burned. His exhaustion was a paralyzing weight, but the fear of the pack was a potent fuel. He pushed his body past its failing limits, blurring through the sparse scrub. He had to reach the distant cluster of granite kopjes. They offered crevices, shadows, and the chance to disappear. The wild dogs were fast, tireless, and their pursuit was coordinated. They did not run side by side, but in a deadly relay, one dog surging ahead when the other began to tire. Kael could hear their panting, the soft but relentless thudding of their paws on the dry earth. He reached the granite boulders, a jagged monument to geological violence. He skidded between two massive stones, his patterned coat instantly dissolving into the shadows. The pack, frustrated by the sudden loss of their target, swarmed the rocks, their angry barks finally breaking the silence. They sniffed, they searched, their movements now a frenzy of baffled hunger. The one-eyed leader stood at the base of the kopje. She stared up at the shadows, her breath steaming faintly in the cool night air. She knew he was there, but she also knew the cost of a prolonged search in the rocks. It was a waste of energy they could not afford. The baboons were waiting. With a final frustrated snarl, she turned, calling her pack with a sharp bark. They retreated, disappearing as silently as they had arrived, swallowed by the vast, indifferent night. The hunger was still there, but the scent of blood and sand had mingled with the bitter taste of failure. Kael remained motionless, wedged in the crevice, for a long, agonizing time. His heart hammered a frantic rhythm against his ribs. When he finally emerged, the moon, now high in the sky, cast a pale light on the land, a witness to the strange, silent truce. He was still hungry, his muscles screaming from the exertion, but the air, thick with the scent of sand and blood, held a promise now. The promise that even in the darkest of nights, there were still moments of strange, beautiful solidarity. He survived, not through speed, but through a small, reckless act of defiance. The desert demanded isolation, but sometimes a shared struggle could be the only path to life. He started his slow, weary walk toward the east, into the deepening night.